Well, welcome everyone to the first ever in-person version of Keys from Keynote. This is such an honor. I have the opportunity to chat to one of my favorite keynote speakers, Shawn Introduction.
Oh my goodness.
From Edmonton, Alberta. Shawn and I met each other about, I want to say 6-7 years ago at a Remax event. Had the chance to interview you in a couple different formats up until then, but Shawn, welcome for the first time to Keys from Keynote.
First time, Keys to the Keynote. We are here at the Fairmont Banff Springs.
That's right.
In this like completely empty room. And it's been amazing just watching your journey and seeing what you're doing with this channel and having some incredible guests on. And yeah, just honored to be here, honestly, talking about one of my favorite subjects. Actually, I don't get to talk about this subject very often. So I usually talk about something about innovation or AI. Nobody actually asks me about keynotes. And so this is a dream.
It's so cool to jump in. Okay, at this moment in time, you're about 24 hours out from giving the closing presentation at the conference we're at, which is a real estate conference called Banff Western Connection. How are you feeling like at this moment in time? I know you do a lot of speeches, but like just run me through like what's going through your head 24 hours out.
Yeah, so quite honestly, like the day before usually a keynote, I'm usually like prepping right up until the last minute because I like to make sure that it's as customized as possible. Today, actually, the client was like, we need the slides at 12 o'clock and your AV check is later, at 5:30. And so I'm like, okay, I got to do this really quickly. So I told the team, I was like, guys, I need more time. I need more time to like work on this. We had some other things planned. Like I love just planning up until I don't like to hang out. I don't like to have dinner usually. And I just like to be focused, get a good night's sleep. And in the morning, I always rehearse. I always make sure that I rehearse because I'm always introducing new stuff. I'm always putting in things that I've never put in before. I'm using like customization throughout my keynote. So for me, it's like all prep. I feel like I'm an athlete, right? So for me, it's like, it's all about the job. And so I think the only reason why I'm not doing that today is that, we got a bunch of stuff going on, but it's on the back of my mind. Like I need to prep for this. The good thing is it's tomorrow afternoon, so I have a little bit more time.
So this has been a particularly crazy week for you. I mean, you were in Florida earlier, you were giving a couple of presentations in Edmonton, we're in Banff, and then tomorrow night, hours after you present, you're headed to the Calgary airport, flying to Portugal.
Yes.
Can you break down for the audience, like what is your current schedule? How many speeches are you doing in a year?
Yeah, so last year I did about 78 speeches. And I'll probably do the same this year as well. So it can be crazy. It could be a sprint. Yeah, like this week I was in Florida, then I did a virtual in Edmonton. We do this in a theater. Then we had an actual in-person in Edmonton. Going to Portugal. I was in Athens a couple weeks ago. And so like this month, we probably had like 10 keynotes that we had to do. But sometimes it can be very chill too, right? In December, I didn't have a keynote. Or the end of November, I had some time away with some friends and some family that I just blocked off. In 2 weeks, I'm going to Disneyland with my kids. So like, it can be incredibly taxing and a sprint, especially like a week like this. But then there are times where it's just like completely relaxed. And I think that's the best way that I work, which is sprint and then relax.
In terms of what you're talking about, it's all about innovation, and it is moving at such an exponential pace that something you presented in October is almost, there's probably fragments of it that you can use, but a lot of it might not be relevant or has changed so much. So what's your own process for ensuring that you're staying as up to date as possible on all the changes that are happening in the innovation space?
Well, number one, you can't keep up with all the exponential nature of innovation and AI. Like that's never going to happen. But I think one of the things that I'm so passionate about this subject around innovation and AI that I'm always in the weeds and trying out new products, trying out different things that are coming out in the market. Like I'm always the first to try things. That's always just my nature. And so I think that's just been embedded in my DNA. And think about it as well. Like I'm going to all these events. I'm sitting at the back of the room with some of the biggest companies in the world, getting a download of what their future is going to look like, what their strategy is going to look like. I'm before a keynote, I'm in 2-3 calls with the CEO, with some of their most key leaders, understanding what their strategic problems are and what opportunities they see. So it's like I'm just getting a fire hose of information from not only the client and what's happening on the ground floor, but I'm literally in the rooms hearing about what everyone's working on. And plus, I'm also building stuff too. And I see myself as a builder and a tactician. And I think that the beauty of a keynote is when you customize, when you put in the effort, when you listen into those calls, that differentiation, when you make sure that presentation is built for them and they see it and they know it and they will know, the audience will know right away when something is something that you've never done before, and that's where all the difference is made, in my opinion.
One of the things that really was impressive to me about you is the first time when we did meet, it was at a RE/MAX conference, and I introduced myself, and you're like, oh, you're Wade, you run a podcast for RE/MAX, and you opened up your podcast app, and it was legit because I could see that several episodes had already been played. What does your research process look like to ensure that you are customizing each presentation for the different industries you're presenting to?
Yeah, but by the way, that is a hack, and every industry has podcasts, right? They have multiple podcasts, or the association or that company might have a podcast. So my job up until that particular event is just on 1.7 speed to just while I'm working out, while I'm driving, just to get a download of their vocabulary. What are they talking about? What are the issues? What are the challenges? Like I want to be so relevant to the audience that they're like, oh my God, like this person is like one of us. And so that's really, really important to me. And I think it's also when I think it also comes from the place of fear too, right? Because I'm coming into a situation where I don't know anything about this particular industry. I don't know anything about this client. Like I need to put in the work so that I can come prepared so I don't look like an idiot, right? And I'm not there to be an expert in the industry. No one's asking me to be an expert. And I say that at the beginning. I'm not here to be an expert in your industry. But at least that little bit of effort that you can put in to just understand that, it means a lot. So before a particular keynote, like I will go through, like I just did a dental conference. I will go to that conference's dental podcast and just download like all the podcasts and just listen to it on 1.7 speed just to understand what they're talking about and the challenges.
Can you walk me through what it has looked like in terms of getting to this point of a full-time speaking career? So I know you worked with Deloitte at the past.
Yeah.
I would imagine that there's this transitionary time of going from starting to do some speeches, having this realization, oh, I really like doing this, I'm good at it, to then evolving to paid speaking gigs, and then eventually burning the boat and just going full. Like, can you walk me through that story for yourself?
Yeah, so for me, I was at Deloitte for 12 years. I started to speak, by the end of my sort of tenure there, so like the last 2-3 years. And I was talking about the subject around digital and innovation. People want to hear about what that was all about. It was new to them, like mobile and all this digital transformation stuff, like it was new to them. And we were doing the work, and so people want to hear about it. So a client would be like, oh, we have a workshop. Oh, we have this, like, can you come speak at this conference? I'm like, yeah, sure, I can do that. And all of it was free because I was at Deloitte, and it was great visibility for me, and it was great visibility for the firm. We were able to sell projects because they saw me on stage, and they're like, can you come to our organization and do that for us? So I'm like, this is amazing, right? And so as I realized that there was a power in developing content, I realized that there's actually not only developing brand, you're developing power in a way. And it's funny because at the end of my tenure at the firm, I looked at my list of speaking events for the next year. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm gonna be busy. And at that point, I was already making more money than I was being a senior manager at Deloitte for 12 years, speaking while I was at Deloitte. So to me, the shift wasn't actually big because when I left, I already knew that I had an income. And so it wasn't, but to me, I built it up in a very slow way, right? I built up my brand, I leveraged Deloitte, but they were benefiting too because they were getting sales. And so what I realized when I was doing these keynotes, I'm like, I should do more of these and I should record these. So I started to try to get more presentations as much as possible. I would reach out to organizers and be like, hey, like I'm talking about this subject. They're like, yeah, you know, they wanted to hear about it, right? And so it was almost easy because it was a hot topic and people wanted to hear about it. And I had video and that momentum just carried. And that momentum has always been running because of the same playbook that I've been running.
So you had kind of a unique situation there that this naturally wasn't a crazy transition for you to make that jump. If there is somebody who's listening or watching this episode who's thinking, okay, I maybe don't have that luxury, I'm starting to give some free speeches, like what's your advice on like how you jump from maybe you're giving some free speeches to start to get paid?
Yeah.
So that part one, and then part two, increasing that fee over time.
Yeah, my advice is to do 100 speeches for free before you figure it out.
Yeah.
Like put in 100 speeches. It could be anywhere. It could be at a Rotary Club. It could be at your kids' like elementary school. It could be wherever. Like build the craft of doing 100 speeches in front of people. It could be a workshop room, wherever it might be, so that you dial in terms of what people want, if that speech is good. Record every single speech that you can. And once you develop that muscle, then you can say, okay, like I have the footage, I have the credibility, I'm gonna go off and start asking for people to pay for it. But all of it, by the way, the beginning of it has to come from credibility, right? I didn't even say a word for 10 years until I started speaking, right? I just put in the work for 10 years and then I'm like, okay, I have something to say. So I think a lot of people miss that credibility piece because unless you have that and you're talking about a subject that you know and people can, this game is all about perception. It's about value. And that hard work at the beginning, people value that. They're like, this person is speaking. Who the fuck is this person? Who is this person, right? Yeah. And I think that's incredibly important. So it's like you almost have to be a ninja at a particular craft first, then put in the 100 speeches, then say, okay, I'm credible. I got the talk ready. I've dialed this in. Let's start. Let's start valuing what this thing is worth. And that's how I did it. That's my play. But I don't recommend that to everyone. That's how I did it, which is put in the work, do a whole bunch of speeches for free, and then see what happens. And I think my acceleration and momentum was very quick because I had all those things in place. And then the video piece, which is the X factor for me. Like the video piece is the most, in my opinion, everyone's looking for a silver bullet. That is actually the silver bullet. You know how people say there's no silver bullet? There is a silver bullet. The silver bullet is video. And I've been working with these guys, Bad Films, for a while now. And we started to shoot all my keynotes. And we've been running that like a well-oiled machine. Here we're in Banff. We brought them to Edmonton. We're shooting the keynote. And that content is power. Content creates luck. The more that you put out content in the universe, the more great things will happen and come to you. So,
what have you found from that content game of like the clips and everything? Like what typically does best, or how do you decide which parts of your speech are going to be clippable, shareable on social media without maybe giving away all the like secret sauce of what you present about?
I think, I recently did a presentation for speakers. It was my first one that I've ever done for my speaking agency. They brought a whole bunch of like 50 of their like top speakers there. And I put up this slide, which is like social media value versus vanity. I believe a lot of speakers put up a lot of vanity posts. Like, look at me, I spoke here. That's not helpful to anybody. But you still need that. You still need, it's nice. You still need a vanity post. But what's most important is a value post. So what is something that somebody's gonna share to their CEO, to their their CFO, what's that dangerous idea? What is that valuable nugget that you're gonna share to someone else that I'm like, wait, this is interesting, this is enlightening, I'm gonna do something within my business because of this, or I'm gonna inspire somebody because of this. What is that valuable piece of content? And I think that's incredibly underrated in terms of putting out a clip and making sure that that is valuable. Is it shareable? I think something that we say internally is like, would you share this? And so I think over time, I've realized just putting out content that's valuable to somebody else, that somebody would say, hey, this was interesting, I'm gonna share it. That to me is it. And by the way, I have rarely gotten viral. I don't have a big following. I don't have a ton of subscribers. I don't have clips that go crazy. I've just been putting in the work and building a library over time. And we can get to the reel later. I don't think a lot of speakers get really excited about the reel. I don't think you should be focused on the reel. I think you should be focused on the library. And so value, it's about value. Shareable content.
I think for you, there's this famous, I think it's from Atomic Habits, but it's the law of latent potential or something, where it's that hockey stick curve. And that's what I think for you, by the way, because I'm just shocked. You do have strong numbers in certain accounts, but way underrated. And my prediction, my hot take is that 5 years from now, it'll be 10x what it is today across all platforms. That. We can run it back and see if that is correct
let's run it back,
not.
yeah.
But so one of my favorite things that you said in our last conversation when we were talking about public speaking, and this was for a course that I did, an online course, is you were talking about how you can walk into a room and just kind of know how it's going to go.
Yeah.
And so you talked about maybe it's high ceilings, maybe the tables are spaced out, maybe it's the diversity of the room or lack of diversity of the room. Can you break that idea down once again? But also, the second part to that is when you walk into those rooms where you're damn, high ceilings, spaced out, how do you get past that?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I'll answer the first part first, which is, I know when it's going to be an incredible room when the event organizers have put in energy into the room. They put some time into making sure there's lights, there's music, it looks great, but maybe there's a production, maybe there's a great screen, maybe there's a great LED. You can tell when you get in the room which organizers have put in the effort, and putting in that effort actually translates into a little bit more energy. It's funny because the more that the event organizer puts an energy into the set design and what it looks like, the audience actually has more energy. That's number one. Number two is, just like in a comedy club, the reason why a comedy club is low ceiling, it's because that energy is trapped, right? It's trapped in that room. When people are sitting side by side, it's a tight room, there's lots of people, you can feel the energy, you can feel the buzz. If it's spread out just like this, if it's a high ceiling, that energy is gonna dissipate, right? If the laughter is gonna echo, or the ability to contain the energy in a room is probably the most important thing. The second thing is the diversity of the people in the room. If you have a lot of old people that are old, I'll try to think about the worst event that I've ever done, which is the worst event that I've ever done was golf course owners. Okay, they're all of a certain age bracket, same demographic, and they're just there with their arms crossed, waiting for this person to say something prophetic that they've never heard in their entire life. My belief is that high status rooms are difficult to crack. A high status room is a room where people tell them how great they are. They want to show people how great they are. There are different demographics and industries where that's the case. I actually enjoy those rooms too. I love doing you're in real estate. Commercial real estate is a hard room. Residential real estate, a lot easier because they just have more energy. But commercial real estate, it's a harder room to crack. It's a very high status sort of game. Physicians, high status. Diversity of the room. You have more women in the room. No, I'm not gonna. I'm insulting so many people. I don't want to insult men, But women are just way more open. Their mindsets are way more open than men, right? Men come into a situation thinking that they know everything. A woman is actually way more receptive to new information, in my opinion. And so having diversity, having different colors, that actually makes a room even better. And so all these things, like you could, when you go in the room, you see the client, you see the room size, you see how much production they put into it, you can tell. I'm like, I'll walk in a room, I'm like, this is gonna be a smash. I could have a mediocre day and this is gonna be a smash. And then if it's gonna be a bad room, that's okay too. That's part of the training. That's part of the challenge of dealing with a room that may not be receptive to your ideas. In those particular situations, I think what I normally do is I try to maybe remove I put a little less humor in it, and I try to dial in and make it more strategic and more customized and give them more, I would say, more tactical takeaways that they can take home, where in another room I might be more fun, right? If a room is not receptive to having fun, then I think I just do it a little bit less. I think every room should have fun, by the way. Every room should have fun. But that's how I sort of play it. I don't change the presentation drastically, but it's just the vibe.
So you're talking early in that answer about kind of stage setup and what it looks like and the energy that the event organizer puts in. One of the big highlights of your speeches is the visuals, right? Like the slides behind you. I'm curious, have you ever run into a tech issue where maybe it just wasn't working properly? The videos weren't playing. Of course. Okay, so I'm curious on that because obviously you're a great speaker on your own, but the visuals are adding so much. So how do you overcome that? Have you ever had it where they just completely aren't working and you have to go unplugged version?
Yeah, absolutely. All of the above. Slides don't work, computer craps out, stalling, they reset it. It's happened. It hasn't happened. It probably happened a lot more when I was like starting out, and then just after doing hundreds of different keynotes, you're like, okay, let me like just problem solve the entire time. But it certainly does happen. And actually I embrace those because the client is actually, the audience is actually looking for a spontaneous moment. They're looking for a moment where you're just as authentic and as genuine as possible, which I try to make sure that I'm doing. And that's the idea of customization. When they know that you have not delivered this a million times, they're like, okay, they're like dialed in even more, right? If there's some sort of crowd work piece, they're dialed in, right? They're waiting, they're hoping for something that's authentic and genuine. And so when something screws up, I actually think is a blessing, because then you can continue your message without the slides. And the slides are a big part of what I do. But when it has gone wrong, you just go off script and you still tailor the message to them, but now you do it based on other stories that you might have. You have to pull from the bank and just make it as exciting as possible. I think at that point it becomes more of a real conversation. And so I've done it where half the slides don't work, so I just remember what I need to say and I just continue to deliver it without the slides. And just roll with it. And I think that's fine. And actually the audience will appreciate that. Like, we saw that thing didn't work, but man, you handled that really well and we got a lot of value out of it. And that's what people are looking for. So I embrace the screw ups. It's amazing.
Another thing that you can't always control is what the audience asks of you, if that's part of your presentation, is the Q&A part. And I recently put out a post on
I saw that.
on
I
LinkedIn,
appreciate that.
Yeah, talking about how I really like your approach, that you try and give yourself that pause, take a moment, really understand what's being asked. And you mentioned Seth Godin does this really well. So what is it about Seth that you're trying to channel as well when you're up on stage?
So going back to your post, part of the reason why I love taking a pause is because I am trying to answer this question in a way that is still provocative, that is still interesting and still impactful. That doesn't always happen. And I think by taking a pause too, it allows you to, just collect your thoughts. I'm also not great at answering questions. So for me, I'm trying to learn on how to become a better storyteller in the Q&A. And I think continuing to be a great storyteller in the Q&A is still important. the thing I love about Seth Godin is I will never get to his level, but I think what he does really well is that he always turns his answer into something that's provocative for that particular person, and I just love that. I think he still makes it provocative, and he brings all these insane stories from I don't know where, and he just brings them in, and it's incredible. Like, I don't know how he does that, and his recollection of all these incredible stories, and he brings it into these events. I think it's absolutely amazing. So yeah, I've been trying to study and figure out how to become amazing at doing that. So
I don't know if you can think of this off the top of your head or not, but in terms of what is the toughest question, or like a tough question you can remember being asked that truly kind of stumped you when you were on stage, or that was difficult to answer?
So I think a lot of speakers don't do Q&A. I would say the vast majority of speakers don't do Q&A. And I think part of the reason why they don't do it is because it's an energy shift. Meaning, if you just gave this incredible presentation and everyone is on cloud nine, by the way, there's gonna be some people in the audience that don't agree with what you're saying, right? They don't like what you said. And if you're in a room with 1,000 people, there's gotta be 10 people that hate everything that you just said, which is life. That's what happens, right? Most people are not gonna enjoy everything that you say. The problem is that when you get one of those that one person out of 1,000 that gets up and now asks a question, and now they've just changed the energy of the room, right? That did happen to me once. I remember it vividly. I was at Aviva Insurance, and the presentation was amazing, and this guy stood up. I'm looking at Mazen because he was there too. This guy stood up and he's like, I don't agree with your presentation. Your slides are old, by the way. And because, he basically started to diss the presentation, right? And it was a vibe shift, right? Because it was like everyone was on cloud nine, and then wait, now there's a seed of doubt. Maybe it wasn't that great. Now you're sitting there because you haven't checked with everybody else. You're like, maybe that wasn't great, right? And I think, and in that particular situation, I think he said that my facts were out of date. And the way that I tried to answer that question was I tried to understand his position, right? I tried to find out what was outdated, because I do pride myself to be literally the most up-to-date speaker on the planet. And so I wanted to ask him that question, right? And he was being very defensive. So I think in a moment like that, I would still take the same approach, which is trying to understand from the audience point of view what I got wrong, and not trying to be so defensive right away, and not trying to take offense. But that's why people don't take Q&A, because it can change the vibe, especially if you're at the end of the keynote and you want the whole audience to leave on a high. That's why people don't do it. Now tomorrow, I'm ending the conference. So I'm not going to take Q&A because we want people to end on a high. But if I'm opening conference, I love Q&A. I want to do it because I want to get better at it. And I think it actually is great because you're opening up some really interesting questions for the rest of the conference.
I want to shift gears and talk a little bit about artificial intelligence, which, I mean, that's a big part these days of your presentations, because that's where tech is going. You think about the future of different industries, and we were talking before we hit the record button here of how many different industries will be impacted. What are your thoughts on the speaking industry in general? Because it kind of seems in some ways like maybe it's like a little bit future-proof, that people will always want to see the in-person version of whatever that is, whether that's a musician or a speaker. They can hear the same message on a podcast maybe, but they want to go and they want to be present and hear that in person. What are your thoughts on how maybe the speaking industry will be impacted by AI?
It's a great question. I think events are going to have a boom, right? Because I think events is where you actually create new knowledge. You're colliding with other people. You're learning what's happening inside people's businesses. That is data that AI can mostly not get, right? AI can actually pick up all the information that has been collected throughout human history, but it can't collect all that those new nuggets, that new information. And that's why events are going to become a boom, I think. That's where you're going to have net new information. I also think that events are going to be a place where you can create brand and affinity and a vibe and energy. So I think events are going to be incredible. As it pertains to the speakers, I don't think that there's going to be a massive shift. I do think that people are going to become way more dialed in to like, okay, is this information relevant to me? Does this change me? Is this information that I can just get off AI? Like, how are you going to provoke me? And I think as a speaker, your job is to build something that AI can never do. It's to be so different, to be so provocative, it's to be so game-changing that an AI can never do. And that's not only through the energy, but through the content. Like, I pride myself when I do a keynote that the things that I'm dropping are things that you can't get through an AI, that you can't get from another speaker. It's not a story that you can get just off ChatGPT. I pride myself to make sure that this is something that you've never heard in your entire life, and it's going to make an impact. And so that's, I think, where we all need to go to, right? Because otherwise we're just like, yeah, just AI it, just get it.
And then how are you using AI in terms of like your full-time profession as a speaker, like your daily workflows?
Number one, I use AI everywhere.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't even Google anymore. I just use all these platforms, Claude, ChatGPT. I think as a speaker, using AI as a great sounding board to what you're thinking about is incredible. Like, I'm like, hey, this is my take. I want you to defend or reinforce this take. How would you do that, right? So it gives you some ideas of how you should bolster your thesis of what you're talking about, right? So I think it's a great sort of chief of staff in that way where it can do that. I think from a workflow perspective, it's been really great. So I've been building my own AI agent. So like an email comes in, it automatically updates sort of my internal CRM. It checks the knowledge base of how I would answer this. I get a lot of same emails, like when are you available? It checks my calendar. And then I'm able to draft a response right away to my agency. So, and that's why my agents are like, why, how are you so responsive? I've always been really responsive, but this is just taken to the next level. And, like this morning, for example, I was customizing something for a brand deal. So another big piece of what I do is I can do a lot of brand partnerships and brand deals. So we're just coming up with a copy and coming up with the components of what that brand deal looks like. And yeah, I got AI as my sparring partner to figure out how do I write this in a better way, craft this message in a better way. So I think that's been great. Also for visuals, like I pride myself in having incredible visuals, especially if you're at these big stages where you have these massive like horizontal screens. I want to make sure that people feel like they're at a rock concert. And I think to enhance all the visuals using AI is really powerful. So you can use these platforms like Runway, the text-to-video generator, or Sora text-to-video generator to just create incredible images. I think I use Midjourney a lot, which is for text to image. So I use all these things to create these really compelling visuals for the audience. And yeah, so I think that's just gonna accelerate. I think at some point I'm gonna use my own AI for almost all my slides because just to make it look amazing.
A couple of minutes ago, you were talking about how, like, as AI becomes more ubiquitous, we're gonna have to do more as speakers to really stand out and be creative. I came across a speaking style a few months ago.
A speaking style.
Somebody had commented on one of my YouTube videos called Pecha Kucha. And so I started looking into this, and I came across one of your videos that you were doing a Pecha Kucha presentation. And so for the audience that isn't familiar with this is 20 slides. Each slide is 20 seconds.
You just randomly fell upon this Pecha Kucha.
Randomly fell upon this Pecha Kucha. So what is the background of what led you to do a Pecha Kucha speech? And how does that, like experimenting with different types of things, why do you think that's important to your craft, what you do, and staying creative?
Okay, and I don't want to boast here, but I think I have the most viewed Pecha Kucha presentation of all time.
Is that a fact? That's a
other than the Pecha Kuchas that are about how do you do a Pecha Kucha.
Yeah.
I think it's the most viewed Pecha Kucha of all time. You can check it.
That makes sense. I found it.
I
wasn't looking.
It was 2012 too. It was like so long ago. This was before I started speaking.
Yeah.
Like professionally. And it was at the Meyer Horowitz Theater, which is crazy because that's where we shoot all our virtual keynotes. We've done hundreds of them. And that was a big catalyst for my speaking career, actually. It was the first time that I delivered a speech in a theater, and that I was untested that went incredibly well. And it was a seed to be like, whoa, like maybe I could do this, right? And so Pecha Kucha is a format, 20 seconds, 20 slides. I did that once. I saw I went to this, a friend invited me to this Pecha Kucha night where people would do these presentations. And I saw this great guy, his name was Omar Mawalim. And I remember him doing a Pecha Kucha about cats. He loved cats. And I remember it was so brilliant, it was so amazing. And I'm like, man, I'm gonna do a Pecha Kucha on something fun too. And mine was on the spelling bee, why Indians always win the spelling bee, which is actually, that's a documentary in itself, right? Yeah. Indians, the most prolific at the spelling bee of all time, okay? I mean, if there was an Olympics or a spelling bee, we would crush.
That's it, yeah.
So I wanted to break that down in a fun, humorous way, and also going back to, my own sort of background as well, just being Indian. And so, it was just a fun way of just doing a presentation, experimenting with slides and doing it in front of people. So I think experimentation like that is great. And that was a pivotal moment in my speaking career, because I'm like, oh my God, like this is crazy.
You have a book, The Bold Ones.
Yes.
How has that impacted your speaking career? Like I'm curious from like an event coordinator perspective, is it like, oh damn, you have a book, like that increased demand type thing? Did you notice like any sort of difference after you published the book?
Yeah, I think the element of speaking is all about brand. It's about brand equity, right? Your value as a speaker, your speaking fees, your clout, all that is about brand perception. And all the things that you can do to increase your brand will add to the aura of who you are. So whether it's a book, a Netflix streaming special, you climb Mount Everest. All these things will add to your resume, and that certainly has added. Now, has it been exponential because of the book? No, I don't think in this era. I don't think that any book will dramatically increase your speaking fees and speaking engagements, unless it's a game changer. I don't really think that anything will now. I think it's about like putting in the work and continuously just developing your craft. Like back in the day, you could have somebody like Simon Sinek who would have a crazy TED Talk, Brene Brown have an incredibly like popular TED Talk that would go nuts, and then they could build an entire career off that. Today, that can't happen because the world is way too fragmented. I can't name you another thought leader that has really just like blown up because of one thing over the last number of years. It doesn't happen as much anymore. And so I think it's important. Brand, it's all important and you should do it, but you shouldn't do it just you think that it's gonna get you a speaking gig. It's not. It's not gonna get you a speaking gig. It just adds to your brand relevance.
You've touched on a lot of points in this interview. If you could go back to day one of like that decision to try and go full time with this, I mean, maybe it was a little bit different because you kind of built that up with Deloitte as it was, but is there anything you would change or do differently given all the knowledge you have now? The one thing that I would probably do is I would double down on the video thing. I would have shot way more stuff. I mean, I still shoot more than every speaker out there, maybe other than Gary Vee, but like I think that content creates luck, and I would have spent more money, more time, more investment in making sure that I can capture this footage and put it out. And so in order to do that, actually, there's one step before that, which is writing. Write more. Like that's one of my goals for 2025 is I need to write way more. Like I need to just double down on writing more content and putting it out there and trying and failing and experimenting, because the more that you write, the more that you're going to become a better performer. And so for me, it's like a lot of people might have one speech that they'll sort of rinse and repeat for years, and God bless them, they've been able to do that. I am not that, because I speak on a topic that's always changing. So for me, it's like always building, always writing, and to me, I wish I did that more at the beginning, and now I've realized I'm like, oh, this game is about like putting in the reps.
And yeah, writing is huge.
Final question for you, Shawn.
Yeah.
So when I go to speakers.ca, there's a carousel.
Yes.
And you hit maybe once, twice to the right, and then there is your face. So from my perspective, it almost seems like you're, if not at the top of the mountain, like approaching the top of the mountain in terms of sought after speaker, somebody who's doing this on a full-time basis. How do you view that, and what is your hope for the future for your speaking career?
Yeah, I appreciate that. You know, it is nuts. Like, I remember when I joined Speaker Spotlight, which is my agency, I've been with them since the end of 2017. I always saw this like headline banner, and they only put like their celebrities on it, right? They only put Simon Sinek, Hadfield, Clara Hughes, and I'm like, that would be amazing to be on that headline. They have another thing called Most Requested Speakers. I'm on that, but the headline banner, like, that would be amazing. And when I got that email last month to say, hey, by the way, we're gonna feature you on the headline, and by the way, you're gonna be on this going forward, I was like, I'm like, I cannot believe it. Like, I can't believe it. I'm like, how am I on that headline banner? So it's an incredible, it's not just me, it's like a testament to my agency and the belief that they have in me and how much we've supported each other in the journey. And so, am I at the top? I don't think I'm at the top of the mountain. I mean, I feel like I'm a rookie. I'm still starting. I'm still trying to develop my gift, my voice, my message. And I think it's been a great partnership. So it was a humbling moment. It was really cool because I always looked at that, be like, that would be cool one day. But I thought I would have to, like, you know, I don't know. I thought I would have to go to the moon like Hadfield. But, and then Chris Hadfield's probably looking at this and be like, well, this guy didn't go to the moon. So yeah, it was really cool.
Shawn, thanks so much for doing this.
Hey, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's an honor to be on here. And yeah, it's just been really cool to see what you've been doing. And yeah, thank you so much for having me on.
Boom, you crushed it, man.
Awesome, man.
Good job.
That's awesome.